mighty win. Um, uh, Again, there's a little bit of a change. I'm still trying to get used to this, to be fair. Chris is going to be doing and Mighty is going to be doing Monday, Wednesday. Me and Mighty are going to be doing Tuesday, Thursday because obviously we got the Predator on Friday, so it's a little bit of a change. All for the best, I hope. So welcome and apologies. We've just jumped on board and said boo because we've had nothing but problems with the intro. So today wasn't starting very well.
Since we removed Isak.
Yeah, since we've removed Isak, I think he's doing a Wissa and removing everything from the.
He's going on strike.
He's going on strike, yeah, same as everything else on our logos. But anyway, we're here. We're with you. So before we start the show, let's get the housework done. Welcome to everybody watching across all of the platforms. Thanks to everybody that works in the background, doing an amazing job. If you could, and you've been absolutely amazing over the last few weeks, hit that like button. It's the only thing we ask of you. It's totally free to do so, but it does not help us as a channel to get to other NUFC and other supporters. You'd be surprised how many supporters, obviously since the Isak story started, we've now got lads that obviously support the Reds, come on board as well now. And like I said, thank you so much for all that support. But if you wouldn't mind, just keep going for us. Subscribe as well. It's totally free. Again, numbers have been excellent over the last couple of weeks. So please continue to subscribe if you're new. And again, don't forget to hit that bell. We do 7 days a week content, some days 2 shows a day. And it's all live. Very rarely, unless you become a member, you'll get recorded from us. So it's totally unedited. What you hear is literally how we feel. Live on air. So if you hit that bell, you will get notifications for every time we go live. If you want to support us, you can become a member. It's a small monthly fee, different levels to choose from, blah, blah, blah. If you've got a question for me or Win during the show, you can put a Q in front of that. It just helps us highlight it. It ain't guaranteed to be mentioned, by the way, because there's lots of people in the chat. So if you want to guarantee it, then use the $sign. Throw us a Talk TV super chat, and then obviously that message will be read out. And don't forget as well, even though we've gone one game in, you can just jump on board to our prediction league. It's a £5 entry fee that you can become a participant. You can predict all of Newcastle scores.
Plenty people haven't scored yet.
Yeah, there's exactly. Predict all of Newcastle scores this season. And if you're within the top 6 at the end, you win a cash prize for top 4, and then 5th and 6th will get a prize just to say thank you. And like I say, you've got to register your scores before kickoff, and there's 2 ways of doing it. And that's part of the WhatsApp group. Like I say, all the information is in the description down below. So that is where we are with that. So thank you again once.
But don't wait too much longer, because obviously if you try and join a bit later on, you'll be that many points behind the...
Yeah, but we saw last year, though, didn't we? There was a couple of lads, who come on board. Was it like 6 or 7 games had already been in? And by the end of the season, they were like
still got
third.
In the money.
Yeah, third. So, like I say, it doesn't really matter. And I can see straight away we've got a couple of lads, a couple of the Reds are in the chat. So again, RCL76 and CJ, welcome on board. And like I said, at the end of the day, this is an open platform for. It doesn't matter what colours you wear, as long as you're respectful. Absolutely fine with that. But obviously, it's predominantly Newcastle news. So we were talking at the end of the show yesterday, and it was nice to have Ben on.
God bless him.
Born a Red was his tube. Very interesting chat, and like I say, as always, very passionate about his own club, as we are. So a lot of talk is always going to be biased towards one way or the other. So we're going to talk about, obviously, what's on the thumbnail is the potential issues that we see. And like I said, for me, I still believe that there's been a bit of an undercurrent from pre-season with Isak talking to his advisor that has just been brought on board as well as his representatives to try and push for a move to Liverpool, which is his preferred club as we speak. But there's going to be issues regarding that, and I've been scouring for the last 45 minutes before we come on air. Any potential issues that we see now. Unkunku is a new name that's come on board now that seems to be at the forefront. And I read this morning, Team Talk are reporting, and again, I don't know how true this is, have made initial contact through intermediaries to assess the possibility of signing Jorgen Strand Larsen from Wolves. While Larsen is open to the idea of a move to St James's Park, he will not force Wolves into a sale and respect their position. Interest from across Europe is expected to test Wolves' resolve, and Newcastle could become the first club to make a decisive move. The chance to play in the Champions League is believed to appeal to him, giving Newcastle an advantage. He's 25-year-old Norwegian striker, Larsen, and transfer market value at around about 30 million euros. But I think they, again, with the current situation and the current climate with strikers today, as it's reported there's nothing stopping Wolves doing a Brentford and asking for around the 60 million mark, 50 to 60 million mark for this lad. Again, you can say he's a proven Premiership striker, scoring goals. He's not got a handful, but I mean, he does know where the net is, and he's a strange customer, Strand Larsen, within the Premier League strikers, because he's an old-fashioned style striker. I quite like him, to be fair. There's nothing that I've seen about him that I dislike. But again, I still look at the Alan Shearer days and like that hustle and bustle of a centre forward that likes to cause a bit of havoc in the back line. And then we go on to Wissa, because there's lots of people now commenting about the Wissa saga, and is Wissa any different to Isak going on strike? Well, there's a massive difference. And again, we were talking about the situation just in the green room there before we came live. And for me, when you look at what Wissa has done for Brentford, right? And again, this goes back to a gentleman's handshake. And this is what I was saying before. If it's not written down, there is no guarantee that it's even going to be honoured. Even if it's written down these days, there's no guarantee of it being honoured. Gentleman's agreement is just a handshake and a verbal agreement between two parties. Now, because Ivan Toney went to Saudi, Brentford apparently went to Wissa and said he'd asked to move that season, the season that Ivan Toney went to Saudi, right? And they said, give us another year and we'll promise you a move then. Now, when Newcastle came on board and inquired about Wissa turned around and said to all his agents, I'm 29 next birthday. This is my only chance to play Champions League football. Coming from his background, where he's been, a middleman, if you like, in a lesser club, he sees the Newcastle not as a stepping stone, because obviously he's at the end of his career now, but he sees this as his only ever chance to play Champions League football, compared to obviously Isak, who's 26 at the end of next month. He's still got a good 7 years if he looks after himself. And again, we all know that certain clubs, like Newcastle's using, Isak's using Newcastle as a stepping stone to get into the higher grounds, if you like, then fair play to him. But again, it's the way he's gone about it, being wrongly advised. Now, I was going to come to you and just ask, again, I don't condone Wissa's actions at all, right? But I understand it a lot more than Isak's situation because of obviously the timeline. And again, I know Chris laughs at me when I say, he's past his prime now. Wissa is coming to the closing doors of his prime. He's only going to go down from here when you look at output. Now, again, we look at the Mo Salahs of this world. a player who looks after himself physically as well as mentally, and he continues to perform season in, season out. I'm not saying Wissa can't do that, but I don't know Wissa. I'm just going across a general plan there and just saying, tarring everybody with the same brush. It is common knowledge to see when a player reaches 29, he starts to decline in performance. So under this current cloud that we find ourselves, Wissa, I believed, would have been dealt with and the deal would have been done over the weekend. That obviously has gone, and it seems now that we are further afield from getting anybody through the doors that could potentially see another bid coming from Liverpool for Isak. What's your thoughts on this current situation then, mate?
It would appear by all the reports coming out today that Newcastle haven't made another offer. It would appear that Brentford have told them it's 60 million, take it or leave it. And Newcastle have said, right, we'll leave it. That's what everywhere's saying today, and this is despite the fact that Wissa has taken all these Brentford Instagram posts and social media connections down and one thing and another. It is different to Isak, as you say, because of the very clear promise which Wissa was given initially when Ivan Toney went, and then at the start of last season. But and again, allegedly, the fee that he was told he'd be able to leave for, if it was for a Champions League team, was 27 million.
Mm-hmm.
A year ago. Obviously, in that year, circumstances have changed for Brentford. They've lost Mbeumo, and leaves them short. Now, okay, they've just signed Utara from Bournemouth, but with 19 league goals, non-penalties, Wissa's value has obviously increased, even though he is a year older as well, and a year left on his a year less left on his contract. So, there's going to be some leeway. Brentford are a lot more reluctant to sell now than what they were. And they're going to have to be persuaded, and the way you persuade them is by paying the money. But I cannot see PIF paying 60 million for a 29-year-old. I just don't see that happening at all.
No, mate.
Which leaves us back in the doodah. And if that's the case, I cannot see any way at all that Newcastle will allow Isak to go before the window shuts, unless we've got suitable replacements. The fees that we are currently being quoted when we're going looking for players is now reflecting our desperation, shall we say. It's only natural that whoever's selling us the players knows that we're getting pretty damn desperate. If Isak is in fact going to leave, so they are going up. So again, the likelihood of Isak going, unless somebody because we are going to have to be paying top dollar to get his replacements in, and I say replacements plural, because we need more than one, and even more so if it's Wissa, because obviously you'd then be losing Wissa for the African Nations Cup, and the situation becomes ever grimmer. I say it becomes ever grimmer because me, with me glass always half full, is saying I don't necessarily think it'll be a bad thing if we have to, have to, in inverted commas, hang on to Isak. Because I think if we do, a mechanism will be found to integrate him back into the squad, and he can be back on the pitch again, doing what we want him to do in a black and white shirt, which is score goals. Now, that is going to immensely displease a large proportion of Newcastle fans.
Yeah.
But as our Man City friend told us the other day, exactly the same thing happened with Tevez when he, said, I'm never playing for you again. I want to go to Man United. And he down tools, went to Argentina against the club's wishes. He came back. He was fined they didn't sell him. He was fined £10 million and went on to play a major part in them winning the title that year. So there's nothing to say it can't happen again. And the ball is clearly in Liverpool's court. They more or less know for certain if they come and say there's 150 million, we'll sell him. And I think if they came with 150, we would sell him anyway, regardless of whether we've got replacements or not, and would spend from now till January struggling in the league. And although I'm saying struggling in the league, we didn't struggle that badly on Saturday, all things considered. And whoever it is, if that happens to be the case, then again, glass half full, mighty win. Whoever takes over, whether it's Anthony Gordon persisting in that role, which I don't particularly like, because not only is he not a particularly good centre forward at the minute, but you're also missing out on his best position, which is on the left wing. So I don't know how that would work. Do we just have to bite the bullet and try Sean Neve, try Asula, give him, because they will improve. The more minutes they play, they will improve. The trouble is, if that improving, the time taken to do that is costing us points, because it could then be that by January we'll be so far behind that, we'll not be catching up. But having said that, if you look at last season, when we went into December last season, 12th we were in the league, and everybody was more or less writing us off then for doing anything. What did we do? We won our first trophy in 70 years and finished in the Champions League. So there's nothing to say that can't happen again. And who knows, it could be, you never know these things, that you could have a silver lining and all of a sudden Gordon discovers a Midas touch in front of goal, etc., etc., etc. There's a whole host of permutations that could occur. Moisey Keane and Holly Watkins would be Eddie's game as choices. And listen, everybody's shoving names forward. I honestly, my as I've said a few times now, my chosen proper centre forward, as far as I'm concerned, would be Voldemort, and I'm pretty sure we get him for 60 million. And being honest, if you look at the ages, 60 million for Voldemort for me is a far better buy than Wissa at 60 million.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. But it's just, as you said at the start, Gary, it's the timing. The timing of everything is what's been so bad. Plus, let's be honest. We as a club haven't helped ourselves with having that power vacuum at board level.
Yeah.
Where, nobody seems to know. The communication is shocking. I don't know. Somebody wants a rocket.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's where it's all come from, isn't it? It's like I said, and there's a couple of lads, and I have starred a couple, so I'm going to go through them as I've starred them. Darren Lee, afternoon all. Sky just confirmed Newcastle have not reached out to Brentford today. No new bid on the table for the player, and we are not willing to pay. Again, this is what we said. Gentlemen's agreements, I totally agree, aren't written on the paper, and there's a lot of people in the show that are in the chat now are talking about the different agreements or the gentlemen's agreements that have been promised to both players. Now, there is a massive difference compared, and again, we're only believing what's out there in mainstream media, and we all know that these guys need clicks and support. To sell the papers. So I always say, until I hear it from the horse's mouth, I do take it on board, but I also don't take it as gospel because there's always a spin. And, you mentioned that story the other day where it's supposed to have meant one thing. And when you read the story, it meant nothing at all. There was nothing behind the story apart from what the headlines drew you in to the story. And that's exactly the same with the Wissa, Isak, and everything else scenario. When you actually read the story, nothing's changed. Iniesta said, would you take 29-year-old Sorloth from Atletico Madrid? He wants to leave after altercation with Simeone. Listen, where we are at this present moment in time, the one thing that we can't afford to do is panic buy. It has to be a player that wants to play.
I don't think Sorloth would be a panic buy, other than the age, of course, again, because again, you're looking at 29.
Yeah, but he has to fit into the style of play with. That's why they've done the groundwork on Wissa. Yeah, Wissa seems to fit in a little bit more. I mean, again, I like Sorloth. He's an old-fashioned striker. Oh. He's very much on that Larson type of player, if you like. Strand Larson.
Stays fit. 20 goals in 35 last year. 23 and 34 the year before.
Yeah.
So he's...
But he's more of a Chrissy Wood type player. And we move Chrissy Wood on. Does that make sense? Even though Chrissy Wood is doing wonders at Forest, and I often scratch my head and said, why couldn't he hit a barn door for us?
But I think he could be worked into the system. I don't think there's any problem with that.
But he's not. He'll never break lines.
He knows where the goal is, and that's what you need. Somebody with an eye for goal, and he's obviously got it.
Well, Chrissy Wood got an eye for goal. We've seen that with Forest. It's about supplying him the balls in the right places, which we obviously didn't do to supply Chrissy Wood with any of the opportunities. So I don't know where these guys, whether it is about man management. Is there something behind the scenes where, as much as we've seen an improvement in individuals from Eddie Howe, have we also seen an effect from Eddie Howe's man management to make players also decline? Because we've seen players likes of Chris Wood go to other teams, and Chris Wood has also been successful in a lot of other teams before he moved to Newcastle. It seems as if Newcastle was the only team that Chris Wood failed to produce anything.
Well, bear in mind, when we bought Chris Wood, he was as support to Callum Wilson, and we needed him as a support for Callum Wilson because Callum was made of glass. So the team never actually got used to playing with Chris Wood. He was in and out and in and out and in and out. He was basically only in when Callum was injured. And then we bought Isak. So he got even less opportunity then, which is why we sold him. The team never really got a plan, a long-term plan, a sustained period of time with him in the team. But I didn't rate him anyway.
I know you didn't. No, exactly. I mean, it is one of those situations where I'm still today looking at it, and I see this striker who seems to be formidable for Nottingham Forest, and yet when I watched him in a black and white shirt, he just didn't look the
Listen,
player.
there are players who just do that. They just find somehow find a natural home and do brilliant.
But
And
that's what I'm saying. Exactly. But you have to play to his strengths, and that's what I'm worried
yeah,
about Sorloth. Because Sorloth, you have to deliver the ball, and we've seen the weekend some of the balls into the box weren't great. So are you really going to get a striker that's going to have to fight for his own bits and pieces? And that's the difference with Isak. Isak sometimes can make something out of nothing, and he also, whatever it is, and again, we saw it with even when Murphy come on. When Murphy come on board, it was as if to say he hadn't got a target man to reach for. There was no real penetration in that box for him to play a ball. And again, some of the, like I say, the crosses from our wing play was woeful. And I'll say that open heartedly, and I think, that, like I say, what we're looking at is players to break lines from.
yeah. What Murphy and Isak did so well together though was that they weren't crosses as such. They were balls, short fast balls, and I mean I thought some of them were very, very fortunate to connect. There was two or three goals I can think off the top of my head where Murphy was just looked to be hitting the ball aimlessly, but somehow it went through Forrested defensive legs, and Isak was on the end of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was some of those assists were. I think slightly fortuitous, but maybe I'm doing him a disservice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Maybe he was super accurate and knew exactly what he was doing, and him and Isak certainly seem to be on the same wavelength.
Yeah, but again, we've seen when you take Isak out, and it shows the amount of goals that Newcastle just don't score without Isak in the side, and that has to be, like I said, playing on the coach's mind, the fact that he's had multiple players now that play a centre forward role. Even Wilson struggled to score goals in this system. We've seen Anthony Gordon multiple times now playing through the middle, and he just doesn't look like he'll ever score goals running through the middle. Then you've got Osula, again, never looks like being in a position to score goals. And again, we've spoken about Chris Wood that has now left the building. So there is definitely an issue within the system that Eddie Howe produces and trains every week. You have to get the right centre forward to marry the system. And that's where I'm going with this. I don't think, like I say, we can all reel off multiple players' names that will or seem to be scoring very well with their parent clubs, but it doesn't ever seem to fit that niche hole. And I think that's why he was looking at the likes of somebody like the Ekatikes and the like, because it just seems to marry the void. A couple one here. I mean, Darren, he's saying about Wissa, he's not right for the club with the way he's acting. How do we know in 12 months he might do the same again? And like I said, we go on to a promise that he was given. Now, there's another question I'm going to put straight behind this one, which is from RCL 76, and it says, and he's questioning why we believe about the Wissa broken promises and not Isak stories about broken promises. Now, I've never said I don't believe it. What we've said was the person that made this promise is no longer employed by Newcastle United. And what they suggested to him was, even though they've given him the option of an increased contract, he's on 140,000 per week, 3 years left on his contract. And what was given to him, and this is, a factual statement that came from our DOF at the time, Paul Mitchell, was there was other players that needed contract extensions. And obviously we've got a PSR issue before Alexander Isak's contract would be negotiated. It's not something that they said you're not going to get. What they said was, at this present moment in time, you've got 3 years to run on your contract. we're happy with what you've got. You're on a decent wage, and there's no release clause in there. Now, that isn't the club's problem. That's Alexander Isak's agent's problem because, like I said, at the start of the relationship, there should be a get-out clause if that was Alexander Isak's point of view at the start of this relationship. It wasn't. Alexander Isak didn't look at us as a stepping stone because if he did think of us as a stepping stone, there would have been a release clause put in and a value of that release clause put into the contract when he signed the 6-year contract. He, in himself, I don't think, ever believed that he would ever reach these canny heights.
And I was going to say, and without Newcastle United, he wouldn't have reached these dizzy heights.
No, exactly. So, I
nobody,
understand your point,
was queuing up to buy him from Real Sociedad when we got him.
And I think you've got to understand that these promises that were made, if they were made, nothing written in writing, and it was a verbal agreement that was discussed between Amanda Staveley and Isak back, I think it was 23. And they said, we'll look at it when you've got another 3 years left on your contract, and we'll go from there. And like I said, at the end of the day, nobody's forced Alexander Isak to sign a 6-year contract. Nobody also forced the agent not to put a release clause in there, because I'm sure that if they had have done, they would have still come to an agreement on a valuation regarding that release clause. Now, that being said, you've also got to say to yourself, if Isak, right, had have done this correctly by putting in a transfer request at the start of or the end of last season and said, listen, boys, I've done you 3 years now. I want to move on, but I want to move on in the way that is best for the club. And not down his tools. I mean, I could have understood this more if he hadn't have gone to Austria and had this team building few days out in Austria and said to the lads, listen, I don't want to play for the club anymore, so there's no point in me coming on this excursion, this team building, because what he's done, he seems to have set up the dominoes, and then his next action, obviously when it was at Celtic and told to go home, has knocked all those dominoes, all that team building, all that persona that he's built up between him and the lads, that camaraderie, is now nil and void because of his actions. And that's what I said. This isn't us stopping Alexander Isak going to Liverpool. It's got nothing to do with that. Alexander is stopping himself going to Liverpool. And Liverpool, unfortunately, are doing everything they possibly can to keep Alexander Isak out of the squad. And like I said, it supports both sides of the coin. Alexander Isak will not play and wear a shirt for Newcastle because if he does come back, as you've seen with the likes of Brentford with Wissa, they relax because they've got a striker that's going to be playing, every game for them, a good striker. They can relax a little bit more in getting another replacement for him. And Alexander Isak doesn't want to do that. He wants Newcastle to still be out there looking for a replacement. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, if Liverpool are really interested and really want to take the task, the valuation has never been not spoken about. It's always been in and around the 150 million mark if they want to come in for him. We've heard from Darren Hill saying every player has a price if that price is met. And going on from some of the chat where you talk about, Alexander wants away, that is absolutely fine. We've never said we're going to stop him from playing. But if Liverpool are interested, when you go and pay 117 million on players that aren't going to get you 20 goals a season, you've got to be looking at 130 plus for somebody who will. You look at the Coutinho deals, the 144 million over his arrangement when he left. So again, it's not as if you guys don't know the situation. It is the fact that you guys now are dragging your heels to take this towards the end of the transfer window, knowing full well. And again, you're doing everything you're right to unbalance aside that you're playing second game into the season, the Premier League fixtures. So very interesting setup.
Irish Assassin has taken on a few of the Liverpool lads in the chat. The difference between us and you guys, we will bench him and make him rot. You guys begging for our players is just sad. Isak is the Suarez of Liverpool, and Suarez is another prime example who said he wasn't going to play for Liverpool again. But they said, oh, yes, you are. And he did, and he scored 28 goals or something that season. You guys cried so much then. He finishes off with, I tell you what I will say, though. There is, to my way of thinking, a lot of disingenuity in the local press. I mean, obviously, the mainstream media is completely anti-Newcastle and doing everything they can to destabilise Isak's position.
Yeah.
And that's kind of being fought back by the local press. But for example, there was one article in the Chronicle yesterday, or the day before maybe, saying specifically that Eddie had turned around categorically and said that he was unaware of Isak's wish to leave the club until the end of the season. He's never ever said that. The quote that they keep on using is Eddie saying, after we got beat off Everton but qualified for the Champions League, and the question that asked him was, when Newcastle qualified for the Champions League against on the last day of the season, were you aware that Isak had asked to be away, to leave the club, to explore his options? And what he said was, and this is very important, the words he used, Isak not being at Newcastle next season was the last thing on my mind. He didn't say, no, I didn't know. What he said was, and inverted in parentheses, because we qualified for the Champions League, Isak not being here next season was the last thing on my mind, which is completely different. And it's not him telling lies by saying he didn't, the local press are trying to say that quote means that Eddie is either telling lies saying he didn't know, or in fact he didn't know, and Isak is a total you-know-what. I think both can be true. Eddie was very careful what he said was, Isak not being at Newcastle next season was the last thing on my mind. Because he could argue that having won their first trophy, having qualified for the Champions League, he was probably confident that he could persuade Isak to stay. And that has turned out not to be the case. So that there's, obviously there's partisan reporting going on all over the place, but just to get things into perspective, because as I've said more or less from the start about this whole saga, we need to know where we are in the pecking order, and if a player of Isak's stature wants to go to a Champions League winner, league current champions, etc., 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 get a chance of the Ballon d'Or, you name it, he's entitled to do that. It's how he's gone about it, which is sticks in the crow for me. And if it could all have been done so much more, I don't know, civilly, shall we say, and avoided all of this thing. And that basically, I believe, I'm not exonerating Isak from it at all, but it's largely down to his agent and the cartel media for doing it. So they'll only have themselves to blame if it transpires that he's still here on the 1st of September.
There's a point to me, us as fans of Newcastle. I think the problem is when you now go into a Premier League season, and we've all said, during the shows, I know there's a couple of lads who don't see it as an improvement to the squad with some of the players that we've brought in. Again, it's been very slow at the start of the window. And again, is this because of the Isak issue that's been rumbling on in the background? Because there's no point in going in for players until you know what's what, And I think there, obviously, when you look at the players that we were linked with, this is why I said, when you hear some of the stories that come out about, Eddie Howe wasn't aware of the Isak situation until it happened. Mate, you wouldn't go for the likes of Ekatike or Isak or Sesko or alike if there was no rumour behind that. And that's where I said, Newcastle are I suppose a lesser club outside of Newcastle, if you like. We are a one-club city, unlike others, but history will always put us down the pecking order, as you'll rightly say. We have got to find our way, but that isn't to stop us from competing, and that is, where I look at it.
Here's the other thing. In RSL 76, one of the Liverpool interlocutors here, has anyone thought Isak may have been promised more investment in the team to realistically win stuff? And the last few windows haven't filled him with confidence. Well, forget about the last few. He's certainly, because if you remember, the SH1T didn't hit the fan until we'd already been knocked back on Pedro, knocked back on Delap, knocked back on Mbuemo, and again, as I said, at the time, Isak could really think, bloody hell, are we going to be stuck with this? Same lot again. This was the window when we were supposed to be really pushing on and signing proper players to challenge for first team places, and we're doing absolutely nothing because for the first 3 weeks of the window, 4 weeks of the window nearly, we did absolutely nothing. Okay, we got a Langer in, but that was it. And again, yes, he is entitled to feel, oh, bloody hell, this is not what was in the brochure. I said if we get Champions League, we're really going to push the boat out, and the recruitment has been shocking.
This is what makes me laugh. Those 11 players that turned us down. Robbie, please name the 11 players that turned us down, because I only know of 4. I will give you 5 at a push, but I only know of 4.
Yeah.
So, like I said, don't listen to all the gossip and the rumours out there. And this is what drives me insane with, because he says, it's because they go to bigger clubs involved.
Yeah.
If the said bigger clubs didn't want to be greedy and keep everybody else away from their entitlements, because that's how they feel they are entitled to be in the top 4, then we would have a chance to compete. And the biggest problem is historically. And I think this is where you guys need to come on board with why we get frustrated with the situation that we find ourselves. Historically, we have been run into the gutter because of our ownership. For the last, before the takeover, you guys, you weren't even interested in Newcastle, because when we were in the gutter because of our ownerships, nobody gave a toss about Newcastle. The only reason everybody looks at Newcastle now and gives a toss is because we can start to compete. But we ain't ever going to be able to compete if we see ourselves as a stepping stone and a selling club. Now, as I suggested before, it's been raised by our CEO that every player has a price. But until that price is matched by what the club value him at, he's our player. And that's as simple as that. So, you can come on board with all these, so-called untruths, because that's exactly what they are, total untruths. There may have been other players that we went to speak to, but there was only 4 players, like I say, potentially 5 if I'm going to push the boat out, that we actually offered cash for. So when you make an inquiry for a player, it's only to see where the grounds are. It doesn't mean that you're interested or linked with them by any other way apart from asking a question. And I'm sure if your heart is, you're true to hearts, there's been multiple players that Liverpool have been actually questioning. Doesn't mean that you're involved in them. Doesn't mean that you're actually out there seeking to get them on board. It just means that you're passing and making a conversation. So, like I said, you can read as much BS as you want, and you can obviously throw it at us in the chat, but it's not fact. So that's where we need to be. Here we go. Singh, thanks for the $10, buddy. By all accounts, LFC want to bid. I believe that to be true, but need encouragement, adequate additions. I think LFC and UFC have been in some sort of dialogue since rejected bid and may have relayed that. Now, I think there is massive truth in that subject. Like I said, there was somebody that posted to me, massive follower of Liverpool, gets a lot of information from Liverpool. And I wouldn't say I'm a friend with his, but I've known him for some years. Now, I got a message saying there's been an agreement to sorts of 130 plus 10. Now, I mentioned that right at the start, and I'll stick by that because I think that is going to be what gets the deal done. Now, like I said, Liverpool...
But not until after Monday.
Well, that's what I said. Liverpool ain't stupid. Because while this is going on, Isak still isn't going to play for either clubs. And what favours Liverpool is they've got a striker that can do a job for them in Ekitike. What Newcastle have got is not a striker at all within the squad. So we are in a situation now, like I said, where we could potentially walk away from that arrangement that has probably been set at the table because of the current situation we find ourselves in. Now, that isn't Isak's fault. That isn't Liverpool's fault. And that isn't Newcastle's fault because it's the situation that you find yourself in as a professional club. If you can't find a replacement to match the player outgoing, then you have to say, until we can agree a deal with the right price, then you're ours. Another thing that I was going to say to you.
You may want to address this.
Go on.
You read it.
The Mighty Willie is one of the only actual Georges on these Newcastle live channels. Most are from other areas. Proved your point wrong, Mia. What was that one then?
Well, do you want to just tell them how much of a Geordie you are?
Oh, well, born in Monk Seaton. If you want me to
born
tell
in
that.
Exactly. And do it in your best Geordie accent.
Well, like I said, I listen, I don't class myself as a Geordie anymore because I'm not, I don't live in Newcastle. But it's the only colours I've ever worn. My first game was 1971. So, like I said, I can't, and trust me, when I gave my season ticket up, it was the biggest pull of my heartstrings that I ever had. And now I know I'll never get a season ticket again, which also hurts me. But things happen in your life, and like I said, sometimes football has to take a back burner. But I'm going to ask.
You've only got to be up here for 10 minutes, and you're back to full on Geordie.
Yeah, well, like I say, all my family take the piss out of me when I go back. When I go back, it just gans a bit silly. But that's why I call myself the Geordie Yam Yam, because I am predominantly both, depending on which area I'm in at the time. When I'm back in the Midlands, I talk like I am, and people call it a Brummie. Nothing like a Brummie when you get the two of us side by side. But again, when I go north of Scotch Corner, comes back. It just
I tell you what we have been doing. We've been neglecting to tell you to smash the likes. So we've got 700 in watching at the minute, and we've only got 100 likes. Come on, let's get that to 200, folks. Straight away, jump out the chat for 10 seconds and hit the like button, please. Help the channel along. And let's get off Isak. Get off.
Well, we can't at the minute because I just wanted to finish my point, right? Because everything from this point forward now, right? And again, this is how serious this could get. And people don't realise Isak could quite easily get bankrupt with his actions at this present moment in time. Because if Isak now fails to go and play for Newcastle, doesn't get sold, whether it to be Liverpool or elsewhere for the right price, what could actually happen is that we could send Isak to court over failure of contract. Now, the fines are fine, because he'll lose his wages on a week-to-week basis, because these guys get paid monthly, and that's why when you get some of these brief contractuals leaks that come through, we saw it with Sterling last week. It looks a massive amount, but actually it's because it's paid monthly, not weekly. Obviously, we see it as a weekly offering, 140,000 a week. So if he fails to go, not only will he not get his wages, but there's every chance he'll be taken to civil court because of his failure to honour his contract. Now, that will be an individual going to court to battle his way of what his findings were and what his advisor has advised him to do. So he could find himself penniless at the end of this. And in 12 months' time, and I know people think it's silly, but in 12 months' time, he's still got another 2 years on his contract. He may have not kicked a ball in anger in 12 months, apart from obviously an international, because it seems as though his international manager backs him 100%. So he's still got a value, even after the end of 12 months, if he doesn't kick a ball in anger for Newcastle. So all of the weight behind the contractual side of it is behind the club, if they decide to go down the civil routes.
And we are also informed, by the way, that PIF are considering legal action against Liverpool for tapping up.
Yeah, well, I think there's still going to be a lot of their reps and, like I say, advisors are going to find that they are advising him down a very dodgy path if it gets to that point. So we have to be very, very careful. And again, a couple of stories that have come out. And again, this is from the Echo. Nothing too despondent. It's about, obviously, according to the Echo, Liverpool are keeping him on the end of the hook, if you like, by showing their interest. But there will not be an offer coming out from Liverpool until they find that Newcastle have found a replacement for him. So, like I said, this is the reasons why Isak is being the person he is, because he wants Newcastle to really push for a replacement, because if he backs away, then obviously Newcastle back away. That's the top and bottom of it. You can talk about it as much as you want, and there's going to be rumours here, there, and everywhere, but that is the top and bottom of it, and that's what his advisors have told him what to do and how to go about it. So, and then obviously you go on to the Wissa, which was the replacement for Wilson. And Wissa now, obviously, Brentford are demanding £60 million, which is a 50% increase on his original asking price. And obviously now they've come out and said to Wissa that the Witara, which is what was believed originally, was going to get him out the door, is being a replacement for Mbeumo. Nothing to do with Wissa. So there we are with that story.
So let's get off Isak, because I'm sick of Isak.
Yeah, well, like I say,
as is my wont, I rewatched the match last night.
Yeah,
looking for something to do, and a couple of things came to mind that we didn't really discuss in any detail in the reaction or since. I don't think anyway, unless I've missed it. The first one was our kick-off tactic,
Yeah, which is what I said. They're kicking off into the corners.
and we just. What do you think about that?
It puts the press on straight away. It's a tactic. I said to you, because everybody was saying to me, what is your, why do you think they do this? And again, we all
Well, I
know.
know why they do it, but
Yeah.
they,
It's a tactic that it's a European tactic they've been doing for some time now, where they go long into the corner, and the obviously it gains an advantage because a throw in deep in your off puts you under pressure straight away because you're throwing into feet. Any challenge can effectively get a chance at goal. So it's an effective way and an effective tactic. Remember the days where they used to try and shoot at goal literally from.
I
You
saw
know what I mean?
Malcolm McDonald do that against
There you go.
St
St.
Johnson in a friendly.
There you go. And what they're hoping for is the goalkeeper has to tip it over the bar for a corner. So it's been around since the 70s. It's not something that hasn't been looked at. But obviously,
I'd never seen this kicking into the corner business before.
yeah, it's very much a European tactic that seems to be. We talk about Pep football and how the Pep style breaking, trying to hold the ball from the back, and again, you've got to have a set play and the right players around you to do that. And if you notice, the person who stepped forward to do the tactic was Tonali. And it was Tonali's ball into the corner. I mean, you couldn't have got it closer to the corner flag, if I'm honest with you. And straight away, it puts Aston Villa on the back foot. So it'd be an interesting
and of
one.
course we had that great chance in the first 2 minutes, which because we were in there half of the so that was it. And then the other thing is, of course, our new set piece coach, Martin Mark from Denmark, getting his feet under the table.
Yeah, there was a couple of differences with the set pieces, wasn't there?
And there were two set pieces in particular which were obviously straight out of the playbook.
Yeah.
But the one that caught the eye, of course, was when Big Dan Byrne goes walloping into Shea.
Yeah.
Obviously forgot all about the...
Which one was going where?
Well, I think it was just absolutely natural instinct from Big Dan because the ball was going over and he was trying to get on it, not realising, this is not mine, this is Fab's. Because Shea would have been in with a fantastic shot on target, and we contrived to cock it right up. And I've watched that a few times now, and it really well worked. There was another one in the first half that Trips took, a 3-man move, getting it across that Gordon just missed. So this could be something that we're going to get some benefit from.
Yeah, like I said, it's an interesting one. Like I say, for me, I can see. Again, whether it works continually in the Premier League, I'm not sure, but it'll certainly be one of those tactics you'll see more in the Champions League, where again, looking at our style of play, going against the European sides, something that they'll not expect or anticipate. I mean, everybody does homework now on opposition players, but it's like I said, the intensity has always been our identity. There was just a slight variation to it last season with James Bunce coming on board, where he didn't want us to be on the press for the first 70 minutes. He wanted to do it in stages, and it was more of a half press last season rather than a full press.
It was fits and starts, wasn't it?
It was. It very much was. But you're interested in the Aston Villa game because. Again, it was one of those games where I enjoyed. It was one of those 0-0s that I actually enjoyed, simply because of how one-sided it was in the first half and how we dominated play. And again, unfortunately, due to a lack of a finisher. Didn't come away with the full 3 points. And I think what guts players and what guts, we listen to the reaction of our players, the Anthony Gordons like. One or two things that's come from this, though, hasn't there? Obviously now we've seen Sky Sports change some of the. I don't know whether you've seen that on the sounds with the Anthony Gordon interview. There's only one greedy bastard that was being played over the Anthony Gordon interview, and that's not what was being bandied out there. It was obviously, they were supporting the clubs when they come out at the end of the full time, and they were all being applauded. It's the usual fans, we'll support you evermore type of thing, you know. But it was funny how Sky Sports seemed to, again, this is that spin on with journalists that you've got to be very careful not to fully believe, because I think, unfortunately, all this does is put us in a bit of a, like you say, this negative effect that eventually will affect the rest of the players on the field if we constantly get this negative vibe. But what was interesting is now the Premier League seemed to be investigating where both sets of fans are obviously singing about the Premier League.
You've taken me next point off, is that?
Yeah, the Premier League is as corrupt as fuck. And now we seem to be, like I say...
And the Premier League are actually looking at taking possible action against both clubs for what their fans are singing. That's if we go to the super chats. Actually, that's point marked. The NUFC and Villa fans need to keep up the momentum against the PSR.
That's
racket.
Exactly right. Yeah,
free absolutely. Newcastle from PSR. Might as well do a few of these chats while we're in.
Yeah, go for it, mate. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I don't want Wissa. He's clearly another bad egg with a poor attitude. I've done that one. Sorry. I've sat down and really thought about the striker drama. Our recruitment is a disgrace because we have Champions League football coming soon and we haven't got a striker. We are knackered.
Yeah, love it. And again, this is what I said. This can't be something that you look back on and blame Liverpool wholeheartedly, because it isn't. They have had somebody, and again, I think it's this advisor that have made a contact with Liverpool, because all the leaks have come from their agents, and it's been the advisor that has stuck the storm, has stuck the fire within the field, if you like, because it's that trigger. Like I said, the start of the season with Isak going where he was, there was none of this. So for me, it all started from the advisor asking Liverpool about the interest, and then them coming in with this 120 bid, which started it all going. So for me, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we will ever know.
Isak is ambitious, but like a lot of his generation, he wants it all now, can't be bothered to do the hard miles to earn it. It's pure coincidence. It's just pure incompetence, from the transfer team, been bumbling around like idiots since they kicked out the only professional in the building, Mitchell. Oh, well, we'll agree to differ on that, punt marks. Darren Lee, Liverpool, dragging out the Isak transfer all summer. They know the price, 150 million from day one, but haven't met the price tag. I hope my fellow Newcastle fans are not going to say this one's too old, this one's too slow. For fuck's sake, we haven't got a striker, never mind two. We are totally knackered. Nizza, I don't believe any of these gentlemen's agreements are real. Why not just get it documented as a contract amendment? Gary D, if we sold Isak with no one in then I made the would be mad. If clubs think we are desperate now, what will... All right, I see what he's saying, yeah. If they think we're desperate now, what would we be if we actually sold him, yeah? It was always Wilson's last season, so where was the replacement? Yeah, absolutely. It seems nothing was lined up. Massive NUFC failure.
So much truth in all of it, isn't there?
Yeah.
When you start reading between the lines now.
Anyone thought Isak may have been promised? Oh, well, we did that one as well.
Really, we're talking about Aston Villa, and I wanted to put this out to everybody out there because obviously Villa Park a real fortress for them as well. Villa hadn't lost at home in the Premier League since losing to Arsenal in the first home game last season in
22
August
games.
24. Whilst they had lost only 4 of their last 45 Premier League home matches in more than 2.5 years. Newcastle, with a woeful record at Villa Park as well, only 1 win since September 2013. Indeed, if you take away the Fabian Schär 2-goal inspired victory of 24, the other 5 of the last 6 visits to Villa Park have seen Newcastle lose all 5, scoring just 1 goal and conceding 13. So ahead of Saturday, you then had the whole Alexander Isak cloud looming menacingly over the NUFC preparations, with added worries on how the incoming part of the transfer window has gone as well. I think that if you had polled Newcastle United fans ahead of kickoff, I reckon 90% or more would have had Eddie Howe's team losing that opening fixture, with most also predicting a similar savaging to last season when Villa got at United from the start and Newcastle never got going, whilst falling apart at times in the 4-1 defeat. The fact that it turned out nothing like the above appears to have been all but ignored in the aftermath of this match at Villa Park by journalists and so many Newcastle United fans alike. Now, what I was going to say to you, because of all the crap that's gone on, right? And we've said this before. We said it in the post-match ratings of players. And I know sometimes, bless him, Chris never really sees the positive side of what we did on the field because we didn't win. And I again, this is because of the frustration. But when I read this morning, it actually. The Alexander Isak situation, has actually diminished what the lads achieved at Villa Park. And I think it was a massive feat for what we did. Even though we didn't get the results that we deserved, I thought it was an absolutely fabulous effort from all of the lads going out there and actually sticking the middle finger up to Alexander Isak and saying, this is where we are, and we are together. You know what I mean? That's how I looked at it.
Just there, I considered it a win at Villa Park. Considering not winning any pre-season and no striker that we should have won is just crazy. Shows the quality of the players and how.
Yeah, it was a massive. I mean, like I say, I didn't realise the stats until you said it at post-match. And it was
like I say, when last season we didn't keep a clean sheet away from home against any of the top 12 clubs.
No. Yeah, we were, like I said, that's certainly an area that we need to be better.
That's getting now back to where we were in 23-24.
Yeah, when we serious push, wasn't it? Well, it come out of nowhere, didn't it? You think about
we had the best defence in the league.
In the league, yeah. Was that 22-23? Not 23-24?
No. Qualification.
That was because he come on board
23-24.
23-24. Yeah. But it was very impressive. I'm just having a quick look at some of the stuff going on X and Craig Hope. Again, some people love him, some people don't. There's 2 lists there we're working from. Isak replacement, Wilson replacement are emerging into one, says Craig Hope. Wissa, Ramos, Larson, Muniz and Samu. There aren't many options now. More Wissa developments expected today and Isak's future directly linked. But again, I don't even... I still think...
In his, because he tends to be on the ball and...
Yeah. No, so no mention at all of Voltemara. Again, somebody I really
overlooked. The best Newcastle signings that we've had have come literally out of nowhere. We've just
that doesn't say it's not going to happen again, and that's what I said. None of us really know where we are. But for me, the one thing you've got to ask yourself, it can't just be Wissa, because we're in a situation now. Wissa is a great replacement for Wilson because I think it's an upgrade for definite. But you're not going to get an upgrade on Alexander Isak, are you? So it's going to be a step back on Alexander Isak. But where do you go? Because, like I say, even if we get Wissa in, I still don't see Alexander Isak going, even if Wissa comes.
I can't see him going. Cannot see them letting Isak go if we haven't got two strikers.
No, exactly.
It'd be madness.
Yeah. And I've just been 4 minutes ago on football transfers. Alexander Sorloth has fallen out with Simeone. The player demands to leave the club. Atletico want 35 million euros for the striker, who scored 24 goals. So,
get him.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, like I said, if he gives us 18 months to 2 years, at that price, I would jump at it. I really would, because, like I say, you're keeping well under the PSR. And as daft as it looks, because you haven't got pressure to sell players to become under the PSR, you could potentially, with him and Wissa, say to Alexander Isak, watch. You know what I mean? If the club want to really be nasty.
Foxy's in question for win. Which game will he say is a must-win game for our title challenge? Last season it was Man City at home in September, and this season it's West Ham away on the 1st of November.
Yeah.
Because then we'll have just finished playing Forest away, Forest at home, Brighton away, Fulham at home, and West Ham away. Those 4 games, I think, are considerably easier than the first 5 games. Obviously we've got Liverpool coming up. Leeds away should be relatively easy. Wolves at home. Bournemouth away is not going to be easy. Arsenal at home, not going to be easy. So we'll know for certain by the 1st of November, I would say, how our season's going to go.
Yeah.
And that's 10 games, which is normally the case anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, the saga, I think, will continue to rumble on. And
it ain't going to stop, that's for sure.
No, and like I say, the unfortunate thing about it, and again, there's lots of talk now about I can't. His bloody name just gone out my head. The Juventus lad who's it's gone.
Cesco?
No, the lad who's because obviously there's still talk about Nicholas Jackson, isn't it? Oh, what was his bloody name? The lad from Juventus who's fell out with everybody. Oh, it'll come to me. Vlahovic. Yeah. Nicholas Simpson has just put it in the chat. Thank you, mate. Again, there's still lots of talk about Vlahovic potentially coming. That is, again, it rumbled. Remember that it went
and that was 17 million or something. The only one for him, don't they?
Yeah, and then it went really, really quiet. Now, according
to wages or something, but.
Yeah, and according to Tutter Mercato, reports on Newcastle emerging very interested in the Dusan Vlahovic amid potential transfer developments.
Wow.
So, these are the
Vlahovic
ones.
and Soloth. There's a mouth-watering combo.
Yeah. And obviously the team talk reports again on Ramos. There's some reports this morning. Again, I don't know how true. Somebody had put it in the chat earlier. And I've done a bit of a deep dive on it. Gonzalo Ramos apparently is exploring a potential move
he's
away.
Exploring his options as well.
Well, it's not. He has turned round and said, and according to what it says here, Newcastle are exploring a move for Gonzalo Ramos. So Ramos has said he has shown interest in a move to Newcastle, despite having sporadic appearances at PSG. Now, he's also said that he wants to remain at PSG this season because is obviously, again, and this is very clever by PSG, because what they're doing is giving him minutes now to keep him interested back in there. So I think there's still an option, but I don't think it's a massive one, because it's an 80 million price tag on this lad. He's 24 years of age. He's got a lot of experience.
Good age.
It's a great age, mate. I think this one is a little bit further in the distance, if I'm honest with you. But he's certainly a player that I would like to see at Newcastle. Another one is I don't know whether anybody's known about, is Nasa Villarreal. This lad, there's been some mention. He's from Millonarios or Millonarias. And Newcastle have inquired about the condition of signing the 20-year-old Colombian winger, Nasa Villarreal, according to Guillermo Arango. However, no formal offer was made at that time. So again, this is, if you ask some of the fans out there, that'll be the 12th player that's let us down. These efforts have since fallen through. Villarreal's current contract expires December 25. And his market value is estimated around about 2.8 million. Atletico Madrid are also linked with this player. So there's one where obviously he wanted to explore.
2 seconds, because we've got a super chat in, 4.99 super chat. Thank you, the mighty Chain Smoker official fan club. Wynn's definitely got his eye on a lucky lady. He's been sporting all his new tops from Grattan catalogue since last week. Whoa, Grattan's catalogue, you're giving your rage away there, Chain Smoker fan club.
Yeah, exactly. Is there another one coming? There's
Trolls. Trolls has gifted a membership, and that has gone to
John Cook.
John Cook. Thank you, Trolls.
Yeah, another bit of information for everybody out there is Mahamadou Douambia from Antwerp. Mahamadou Douambia is on the radar at Newcastle, who see him as a long-term investment. However, obtaining work permit for the African player who haven't played international matches could be a challenge. Newcastle have not yet bid for this player, but they are certainly interested in his appearance. Centre midfielder, 21-year-old at Antwerp. Maybe Foxy knows a little bit more about this lad. But again, some interest there from Newcastle, but it sounds very much more of, like I say, them two being development players rather than straight answers for any, straight replacements type of thing. And obviously the only other one for a centre midfielder was David Fratesi at 40 million euros, 25-year-old centre midfielder at Inter. And this was from Team Talk. Newcastle are interested in Inter Milan midfielder David Fratesi. United have reported monitoring Fratesi for several months and note that his limited playing time at Inter will result in a lower transfer fee. However, despite making contact with Inter, the Italian club has maintained a valuation of over 40 million euros for Fratesi, which Newcastle considered too high. They would look closely at around about the 35 million euro mark and unlikely to make an offer unless Inter reduce the price. Although Newcastle's interest as initially reported in January, they have since shifted their focus to other targets. And maybe that is the reasons why they went for Jacob Murphy. Because, again, whether the people will always see this as being Newcastle tax, Saudi tax or whatever, I do think the European market now seems to have fallen virtually in line with the Premier League tax now. And I think what you've got, this is, I suppose we can end the show on this one. Look at that one. Farouk Adekame is the one we need to keep an eye on from Antwerp. 2 goals in 2, 19-year-old from the Ivory Coast. Yeah, I told you, Foxy would know a little bit about these guys. So there's a name for you, Adekame. There you go.
Adekame.
I'll have a look at that one because I love these young players.
Breaking news, Sandro Tonali has introduced Malik Chow to Witherspoons and Gosford.
Excellent. I love that. Interesting formation for the Monday's game. I think there's every potential we could do with this 3-5-2 scenario with a bit of pace up front, especially. I
No,
can't see there being a striker involved
we've got all that to come
to
on
come. Yeah, so there's lots of
Thursday, of course, when
yeah.
we've got who we got on Ray, I think, from Red Are Dead,
Ah,
doing
right,
the
okay.
doing the Liverpool
Review.
preview.
Yeah, I always call it the review because it's you're reviewing what's ahead.
You're previewing what's ahead. The review is when you're reviewing it. Anyway,
Oh,
we're not
anyway,
going. Let's not go into semantics at this time.
no, exactly, exactly.
Time I was getting out for a pint.
Exactly. So that's it. There ain't a lot out there apart from what we've read. It's going to be very much same old for the foreseeable few
Same old.
days.
We'll get Adam Carroll saying, "Get Ivan, Tony."
Yeah, well, like I say, there's Mitro seems to be another one. There's also a 22-year-old Ecuadorian, Nilson Angulo, at Anderlecht, started the season on fire. Some real gems in the Belgian league, says Foxley. Yeah, I mean, like I say, there's plenty of people out there that you could scope with. I think the biggest problem is are these guys going to be gambles? And I suppose a lot of them are.
Well, they are.
But I mean, I would rather, again, I don't want to panic buy it. I suppose everybody comes with a price. But from what I've seen from our under 21 so far, doesn't light me with fire up top. Even though, there was a good result against Gateshead with the 4-3, coming back from 3-1 down. Yeah, it was very good. But we got they were a little bit lost, unfortunately, against Southampton. It wasn't a great watch. I think he finished 3-1, if I remember rightly. So we're getting pummeled at the back when we're not defending very well. And like I say, when the attack's not there, it's not there. And like I say, I don't think there's anybody that can step up yet.
Do you think there's any chance at all that for once PIF could just snub their nose at the Premier League and we get Tony on loan or something like that?
I think the biggest problem you've got now with the Saudi league is because they want to be taken seriously because of the World Cup and everything else. And we can see the investment, there's lots of Newcastle fans, especially because of the current situation, questioning their commitment to the cause because they seem to be backing the Saudi league for buying players. And, it's like I said, you can have as many pokers in the fire as you want. It's the Saudi clubs now will want to keep their main players. They won't want to loan players out. It's I'd love to see Tony back in a black and white shirt because I think unfortunately we never saw the best of him when he was here originally. But it's like I said, I just can't see it happening with it being a World Cup year in Saudi. So they'll want to try and
but with it being a World Cup year, if Tony wants to get his nose back in the international frame.
Well, it's like I said, there is that, but it's like I say, they'll be wanting to promote their league as one of the best in the world now as well. We know it's not, but that's what they'll be wanting. They'll be wanting to promote them with all the best players, and that's why they're coming and offering crazy money at some of these players now. It's ridiculous. Adam Carroll saying, "What about Kluivert from Brentford?" Yeah, I mean, like
from Bournemouth, you mean?
Bournemouth, yeah, of course not Brentford, is it? It's Bournemouth. Kluivert is from Bournemouth, yeah.
Oh, Choppy's in there.
Straight in, yeah, straight in. Listen, like I say, there is a number of players out there that could have potential, but it looks very much at this present moment in time, Muniz, Ramos, Larson, and Wissa are the options that Newcastle are obviously going for this morning and for the rest of this week. We'll give you the updates as and when we get them.
We are on it. We're looking at every single source, and you'll be the first to know if anything breaks.
Exactly.
Hit the bell, and you'll get notified if we're going live with anything that's crucial, shall we say.
Yeah, exactly.
Smash the likes.
I was just going to finish off with, isn't it strange that we were talking about the goalkeeper rule with the 8 seconds and the player to actually do it, Dubravka. Yeah, who's obviously now moved to Burnley, was the first goalkeeper to get
the corner awarded against him.
Yeah, strange one. Right then, so that's it. Thank you ever so much. Let's have a quick rundown of what's happened out there in the world of Super Chat Sync. Thank you so much, buddy, for yours. Mighty Chain Smoker, Trolls, thanks so much. And John Cook is the member that's been gifted. So thank you all.
Keep it up.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you ever so much, John, thank you ever so much, Trolls, for giving John the membership. But John, if you could, do us a favour, keep going. And again, thanks to everybody that's been watching. Great viewing audience again for this Tuesday daytime. Like I say, the lads are back tonight, 9:30. Is that right, Win?
What, sorry?
You guys are on tonight, 9:30?
Yeah, 9:30.
9:30. So obviously we'll have another show tonight. Again, talking about anything that happens this afternoon. But until tonight, it's a goodbye from him.
It's a goodbye from him. How are the lads?
Lassies and Bairns. Take care, everybody. Have a lovely Tuesday afternoon.
Hit the likes on the way out, folks.
Take care.